A very good evening and welcome to this edition of the Fourth Estate. Charles Mongo Shampagi. On a night when Manchester United has been beaten by Arsenal, so there are lots of people excited about, especially Arsenal supporters. Even when Arsenal has very remote chances of qualifying for the Champions League, I know many people will not be happy with me for that.
What more do you want if you can beat Man U?
I mean, for so many years, Arsenal has been training only to beat Man U. It doesn't matter whether they win the trophy or not, and they haven't won it.
Beat a team under Mourinho, not to beat Man U.
And they haven't won the trophy since Twitter was founded, was created. There has never been a tweet that says Arsenal champions of the Premier League. And also on a night when France has decided not to go to the far right, but to stay moderate by electing Emmanuel Macron. I think the results indicate that he might be the next president of France, which is a major debate, especially given the toxic political discussions in Europe, across Europe. And yes, my producer is telling me he's won with about 60%, beating Marine Le Pen. Where Europe is debating issues of immigration, very angry that many people are crossing, especially from the developing world, into Europe to seek opportunities, and Europe finding itself not ready to accommodate all of them. The same discussion happening in the United States of America that brought in President Donald Trump, but also on the African continent, asking the question of what is happening to the young people, especially in these countries, who are being frustrated, turning into border riders. And now, I think the new occupation is betting, which government is trying to hold back. We'll be discussing the question of unemployment. There is a new research that questions how we discuss the question of unemployment. Are we asking the right questions? Are we asking, are we dealing with it the right way we should be dealing with it? So Employment, Entrepreneurship and Education Uganda, this is a research done by Conrad Adenua Stiftung, and the main researcher there is Yusuf Chiranda, whom I want to introduce first. Yusuf Chiranda, many people know him as a former guild president of Makerere University, but he's done many things. So he's seated at the extreme end. Yusuf, very nice to have you.
Thank you, Charles.
Maybe we'll discuss Makerere University and its politics
After
later.
the show.
After the show.
What he is today.
Very nice to have you. From the Equal Opportunities Commission is the chairperson, Sylvia Mowewa Ntambi. Very nice to have you.
Thank you, Charles.
From CSBAG. What is CSBAG in full?
Civil Society Budget Advocacy Group.
Advocacy Group.
Yes.
Julius Mukunda, you're no stranger to to these studios.
Yeah,
and of course, my colleague, Bonapito Ekomoloit, who is actually an employer because he works with one of the biggest companies that pay taxes in this country, Nile Breweries AB InBev.
Yes, good evening, Charles, and good evening, viewers.
Let me start with you, Mr. Chiranda. You are the lead researcher on this, and you're raising new questions about the way we discuss, the way we approach, and then we try to find answers about youth unemployment in this country, in the African continent.
Thank you very much, Charles. First of all, we are three kind of equal researchers for this work, which our organization, the Center for Development Alternatives, has been carrying on with the Conrad Adenua Stiftung for almost half a year. And we come in from a point where issues of employment, unemployment, now almost top the agenda of conversations, whether for economics or in the political discourse that we have now concerning especially the youth. And the very interesting thing which kind of inspired us to take the trajectory which this report focuses on was when you just enter in Google, youth unemployment in Uganda. The first thing which comes to you are competing figures. You will find the Wikipedia page talking about 83% of Ugandan youth unemployed. You will find the Guardian talking about 60% of Ugandan youth unemployed. And even studies that have been conducted by local organizations like ACCORD estimating youth unemployment to be somewhere between 60 to 70%. And then the UBOS, the official statistics, are saying unemployment in this country is about 9.4%.
Yes,
so
because I think UBOS is looking at the same figures with the Minister of Gender, Labor and Social Development.
Exactly, yeah.
Because they have a stricter look at what youth is.
Yeah.
So if you met anybody from the ministry, they will tell you a youth is a person between 18 years and 30 years.
Yeah.
And if you look at unemployment in that bracket,
yeah,
it will come to the figures you're talking about.
Exactly, but I mean, the competing figures already showed there is a problem in understanding what the magnitude of the problem actually is. But then you don't stop there, you also move into what is understood to be the cause of this problem. Now, when you read these same
before
sources...
you go to the cause, Yusuf, sorry to cut you. Before you go to the figures, do the figures really matter? Because do you need to read from a report to be told that there is employment or unemployment in this country?
Certainly, yes. I mean, this conversation always goes on. The political scientists always argue that development, and for that matter, issues of unemployment or employment, are a fact of human interaction and should not be pegged most on figures. But as a country, if we are going to be able to respond to the problem, then we need to understand exactly what the magnitude of that problem is. And for that matter, figures become extremely important. But because it's not only figures which matter, we analyze the existing problem also in the lens of what has been posted as explanations for why do we have unemployment in this country. And the two stories always come out very, very strongly. The first issue is that people just lack the skills. You always hear the story of there is a difference in what the degree you get prepares you for and what the labor market demands. And then there is a conversation, entrepreneurship is low in this country, people do not have access to finance, and so on and so forth. And now, what we find out in our research, for example, in summary, is that the main employment challenge in Uganda is limited labor demand growth. So it's not necessarily the issue, limited labor demand growth. So to put this simply, there are just few jobs for too many workers that we have. So it's not necessarily the issue that people do not have the skills needed by workers who are willing to hire skilled people. It is they are simply not so many workers who are willing to hire people. So we cannot adequately
not so many employers willing to hire people.
Exactly. Thank you for that correction. So we cannot adequately rely on the argument that people lack skills to be employable, because we don't have enough jobs. We don't have evidence of jobs which are demanding workers and which can't be filled because the skills are not there. This does not suggest...
some job opening the other day, we're doing interviews, aptitude test. And the only venue they could host the applicants who qualified for the shortlist for the aptitude test was Nambole. I think there are 124 opportunities. They had 9,500 applicants. Who went about 9,500 applicants, and they filled the stadium.
Exactly.
Numbers you can't get even at a football match.
So I mean that shows you the extent of the issue that we don't have growth in the number of employment opportunities which exist in the economy. So instead of looking at this discourse, which is quite often blaming the victim, blaming the youth, blaming the young person for lacking the skills, for being lazy. I watch it on some of your shows. Like people saying young people lack the skills, they are lazy, they have a bad attitude, they are dishonest. So the problem is more about the youth who doesn't have the job than the environment in which they are trying to find that job. But I'm giving an excuse for them.
I was just reading today, I think Ian Clark is writing in the Sunday Vision, his column, and he's quoting all these reports about our productivity as a country. And every other report that has come out has ranked Ugandans as the least productive in the East African region.
I mean, their question
my question is, how does your research help the discussion about unemployment in this country?
The most important value of our report, at least from the lens of ourselves, is that we try to focus the debate on where it matters most. The issue of expanding the demand for workers, the issue of increasing the number of jobs in the economy, and we call that employment at scale. That there is a chance for people who are seeking employment in the economy to actually be able to get those jobs.
Let me ask Ona to help me out here, because Ona has interacted with people. I don't know how many people, every time we walk off the show, people are asking me for Ona's number because they want internship opportunities, they want jobs, they want other things. How effectively can this country engage the debate about unemployment? From you employ
Look,
in the private
I
sector.
think just first to add to your description of the crisis, there is nothing more heartbreaking than a parent looking for a job for their child who has finished university education. Just like they go looking for a baby class position, they even have to look for a job because they think maybe they have a better name recognition. That's how serious it is. For me, at least from us as a fast-moving consumer goods business, everything is linked to consumption.
Yes.
Whether it's of goods or services.
Yeah.
The biggest crisis in this country and in much of Africa is that there is under-consumption of modern goods and modern services. So there is no way employers can expand demand for more workers when they have no market for the products that they have to produce. So that's the crisis, that's the vicious cycle. There must be adequate purchasing power, real purchasing power in the population to spur demand for services and goods, which will then spur demand for employees. Because there is no way you can have a market where people are demanding for more of your products and you need to produce more and you don't employ more. Even if you are more capital intensive, you still need to employ more people. So the crisis is how do we break that lack of adequate purchasing power in the population? Much of our population is not consuming many of the products that will be required, that will require employees.
And Julius,
yes,
you at CSPAG, you produced an analysis of the budget framework paper. You produced a whole 80 pages for the budget framework paper, which is
out of 500 pages.
Yeah, slightly below 500 pages, 480 something pages of the budget, which has, like Keith Markham said during that conference of Accord the other day, that the budget is more or less done. What they're dealing with is now English.
Yeah.
The edits they're doing basically about the English language. You hear what Ona is telling you. If producers are not able to get market that demands for more of their products and demands that they be delivered in good time, they cannot employ more people.
Yes.
Because they're satisfied where they are, or they're actually cutting off those they have.
Or they are closing.
Or they are closing. You saw you have seen the story of UTL and was trying to assure workers that you still have a job. Please hang in there.
Yeah.
Now, is it a function of budgeting? Is it a function of prioritization? Is it a function of what is the problem?
I think for me is just related to, and this is what we've been discussing actually before we come to this show, is that I just two things. Number one is that government focus to create employment, and I agree with him that we are blaming the victim. We are not blaming the person to create the right environment. One is that, which I've always said, that for us to create employment, we must produce. And when we produce, then people can be able to consume. For people to consume, they must be having some money in their pocket. So for me, is that our government has what we call a very big implementation challenges. That despite having a nice policy, you find out that the National Development Plan compliance certificate that has been issued out is telling us that infrastructure implementation was done at 29%. Yet infrastructure is one of the key investment areas where you would expect that there would be an employment. So if the delivery is...
If you want to see a bump in job creation,
yes,
you invest more in infrastructure
you
development.
could be able to invest, and then you get employment. That's number one. Number two is that those more specific things as a country would be able to do. And I'm a champion of Bubu. Buy Uganda, build Uganda, or build Uganda, buy Uganda. But it is just the Bubu.
Yeah.
The fact is that there are these small entrepreneurs who are just coming up. Somebody is trying to produce bushera, is trying to produce shande in their local ways. Why can't the government come and help them in terms of branding, in terms of marketing, in terms of cheap credit, so that once they increase production, they can also increase employment? Now, those are small things that you can do. And Silva can tell you here is that amongst the strategies, for example, you find that the National Dairy Corporation, Dairy Authority, for example, Karamoja, we know Karamoja, they graze animals, they are pastoralists, for example. It is one area that is completely ignored when it comes to Dairy Development Corporation implementation of activities, concentrate in one area. So if government can be able to identify those simple, small opportunities to create jobs at whatever level, the question of employment can come out. But what happens is that when it comes to resource allocation, then Bobo doesn't get enough resources to be implemented. Then you find that money is dumped in one big sector, and the implementation becomes a challenge to deliver, and we get stuck.
Sylvia, you work at the Equal Opportunities Commission. You're actually the chairperson of the Equal Opportunities Commission. Yeah. Many people will be asking, what does the Equal Opportunities Commission do?
We want jobs.
How equal are the opportunities?
If they are not even jobs, or if the jobs are below par, where do you have the opportunity to discuss equality of opportunity?
Oh, I do have it right here to tell people what the Equal Opportunities Commission does. The Equal Opportunities Commission is there to eliminate any discrimination or inequalities in some of these things we are discussing right now. So we are there to push the mandate within the Constitution, because the Constitution is very clear on wiping out any discrimination, whether by sex, gender, race, creed, political state, anything, mention it. So that's why the Equal Opportunities Commission was established. But if I'm to talk about...
Let me reframe a question for you. In a country where people are hiding their master's qualifications, they're hiding their degrees, so that they can get driver's jobs. In a country where you don't have a minimum wage, it's a debate that has been kicked around for so long. And the president has come up and said, minimum wage, don't bring that discussion, you'll scare away my investors. Where do you discuss equal opportunities? But the question that Yusuf Chiranda and his friends, I think Michael Mugisha and Max Walter, are raising is, how do you reframe this discussion, the employment discourse in this country, even before you go to equalization of opportunities? Yes.
Me, I want to take it back to our education system. When do people start thinking about creation of jobs? Or even within the education system, when does that module come in, that someone has to be employed after school? Because when you look at our whole system, the education system in Uganda, you'll find out that it's all about reading for exams and passing. You do not see anything practical. They do not teach anyone how do you do this practically. It's about reading, it's about question banks, it's about quadro A, it's about 4 points, you see? So if we go back to our education system and change it, and change the curriculum to see that we train our students or our children on how to create jobs themselves, and also put more emphasis on the vocational institutions, which is a little bit ignored.
But the question, that's an old song. That's the question that I think they went out to do that research. They're saying the problem is not that, if I understand your report well, the question is not that people lack the right skills or lack the right competencies. If you go to Constitution Square on any given weekday, and you find people with brown envelopes that have are wet with sweat in their hands, because people have been walking around with their CVs, trying to find that small opportunity. They can't find credit, like Mukunda is talking about. If you look at all the banks posted, by the way, positive returns over the last 12 months, a period of audit. They're showing you, I think every bank has made a profit. They've made a profit because credit is very expensive. And credit is very expensive because they have an easier person to lend to, which is government. So they buy treasury bonds, they buy treasury bills and bonds, and they cannot access money to Yusuf Chiranda, who wants to set up a small cottage industry and create those jobs. So when you redress the education system, do you still answer the question for possibly, I don't know how many millions of Ugandans are out there, they have gone through the education system, they don't have a job, because for 124 opportunities, you get 10,000 applications.
For me, I know it will address the issue, because it's not about looking for jobs. We can create jobs ourselves. leave alone
Why
the
aren't we
different.
creating them? We've been rated the most entrepreneurial country.
Yeah, we do
for
have
many
some
years.
challenges here and there, like the issues of credit and so on. But for me, I do not want to look at the issue of employment in terms of just looking for jobs. We should also create our own jobs. The challenge is government supporting those who are trying to create those jobs. The type of people Mukunda was talking about. I do my bushera, I'm doing my shabwe. Is government trying to pull me out of that ditch where I am so that I'm able to employ other
You're
people?
the researcher. Help us out here.
Charles, this, even for us, came out as a very sophisticated conversation. Let me first go back to what Onapito said. He's in a high consumption sector and he finds low levels of consumption and then farms can't grow. Indeed, one thing our research is clear on is that, first of all, it is companies which expand and hire workers. And for companies to expand or grow, they need two things. First of all, the willingness to grow. The people who establish these companies must be willing to grow their companies. And second, the company must be able to sell goods either in higher quantities or at higher values, either locally or domestically. And when you make more money, you expand and hire more workers. And then you get into the complicated conversation about the structural constraints we have in the economy, which make it difficult for companies to expand, for consumption to go high, issues of infrastructure, the cost of energy, the road networks, and so on and so forth, bureaucratic red tape. But moving more specifically on the issue of education, this is one of the things we also found which dominate the discourse on employment. The education system is blamed that either people don't have the right skills or people are trained to look for jobs, which we don't find to be wrong. To look for a job is not wrong if you can find a job. But the issues to take care of are quite several. One, if you're talking about youth unemployment today, or unemployment to speak very correctly, even if you fix UPE or universal secondary education, it's not going to solve today's youth. There are about 7 million young Ugandans around the age bracket of 18 to 30. They are not going to go back to universal primary education even if we reformed it. So the conversation about education and them might not be the so-called silver bullet. Look at what is on your banner. And secondly, in terms of employment, the functions of education can be looked at as three. We try to discuss that in the report. First of all, either the education system prepares you with the right skills to be able to take up a job which is existing, or the education system gives you the knowledge and ability to identify an opportunity in the economy in which you can start and grow a business, or the education system prepares you as a good manager. You run a company like NTV and expand it for NTV to be able to hire more workers. That's kind of the common good. The value education will give by making me a better manager, I create more jobs for other people. So we are a bit skeptical in this research about looking at the education system just from the lens of making people their own employers. It's not bad to be employed by yourself, but we cannot have an economy where everybody is an employer, where everybody is self-employed. We need to be able to start businesses that grow and just employ more people.
Okay.
And the value of education, therefore, there should not just be seen from the lens of the ability to create entrepreneurs, but also is the education system, for example, contributing to labor demand growth from the sense that maybe it produces people with the right skills to manage and expand companies, which companies in the end hire more workers.
Let's pick it up from there after a very short commercial break. We'll be right back. We're not discussing politics tonight. We're discussing the soaring unemployment rate in the country. And we're asking, where is that silver bullet? Because I know there are many people watching us who are either stranded, they are looking for a job, they haven't found a job, or a meaningful job for a long time. Parents who are worried, they don't know what to do for their children. They sold their pieces of land. They first sold their livestock, then cut off pieces of land to educate a child with the expectation that they'll get a job.
And they get loans.
And yes, people are highly dated. We're discussing that conundrum. We have Yusuf Chiranda, Sylvia Mwebwa Ntambi, Chairperson Equal Opportunities Commission, Julius Mukunda, and of course my colleague Honour Peter Komoloid. We're picking up on the question of education. Do you reform education to get Ugandan jobs? And how do you reform education?
I think in our framework, we try to identify 4 things an education system must meet in order to be able to deliver better employment outcomes. There are basic issues of accessibility. Is everybody able to access the education system? Affordability. Are people able to pay or to get into education in all sectors, in all courses, in all programs? The issues of relevance. Is what you're learning relevant to the opportunities which exist within the economy? And of course the issues of quality. Now, when you're having a conversation of, say, reforming the education system, you need to carefully look at these issues. For example, quality. When we talk about the quality of education, of course, quite often what comes up is the story of the P7 chap who cannot read the composition, which is meant for primary 3. But you need also to move the conversation a bit higher and talk about you want to hire a Ugandan graduate in business administration to be a marketeer for NTV. Is he able to make that convincing pitch for NTV to my company in order for me to be able to give NTV the business NTV is looking for? So we are not quite sure. There is very limited data here. And one thing I must say, the biggest problem you find studying employment, unemployment in Uganda is data issues. The information is just too scanty. So we hear stories. Just before this talk show, somebody was saying that his employer is complaining about the kind of people who are applying for jobs. They are not just at the task. We can't dispute that because we don't have the data to actually disqualify that argument.
Do you need data for that? I mean, to know that people do not have jobs. When I'm coming to work every morning, including tomorrow when I'm coming here, I'll drive through a slum in Bukoto. Just below where I know you use the other road up, the paved one, but the unpaved one. You reach a corner and you find 6, 8, 10 grown-up men, healthy, seated on benches in the morning at 7:30, at 8 o'clock, drinking or playing omweso. And you say, okay, and they speak English. So you think they should be somewhere gainfully engaging themselves.
I just need to give my input. I think on the issue of education, President Museveni has recently actually said that, and I think sort of rightly, that education is being overrated as a solution to Africa's problem. I don't think there's a fundamental problem with our education system because most modern businesses actually do not expect to have ready-made products from education institutions who can suit their job requirements. They have internal mechanisms for retraining.
Yes.
So they are not. They basically want someone to have a basic. So if someone has a university degree, they all often don't put emphasis whether it's first class, second class. They will get basic aptitude tests and basic interview requirements, but the finer details of what it takes to do a job, you get in the job place. That's what most business. So I don't think the education system is so raw that it cannot actually meet the requirements. It's simply that, as we have already discussed, that the employers don't have space to take in more people. Which I wanted them to, if we are to involve government, what is the issue? How do we create purchasing power in the hands of the average Ugandan? This is essential in an agricultural country, and it's obvious that people must be able to sell their crops. But we know that if they are to sell sustainable, there must be bigger demand, and agro-processing is the magic bullet still in this country. Do we have enough agro-industries that can allow people in every part of the country to produce in the quantities, in an organized manner, and be able to get income, and then demand goods from the same factories? All this sort of backward and forward linkages. This is what the country is lacking.
Joyce, you wanted to step in yet?
You see, we will never leave the question of public financing for agriculture if we want to talk about development for this country. And the mere fact that up to now, agriculture is one of the least funded agencies in this country makes us very worried. Because right now, you find out that agriculture, let me give you one example I've been giving. For us to be able to do the things we want, people to increase production, to increase productivity, to get markets, people need certain kind of things. You need the right inputs. But go to the market. We have if you call about fake seeds, fake seeds.
But fake seed is not a function of budget allocation.
Let me tell you why it is a function of budget allocation. Because you've not given the agency the right amount of money to carry out supervision. So everybody does that. So you get all you get all the money, give it to NARS, for example, supply the inputs. But where the inputs going to come from? Because NARS budget has been cut by half, which is supposed to be the overall seer to produce the right seeds for Ugandan environment, for Ugandan farmers to be able to grow. But they don't have enough money. They're relying on the external aid. When the external aid is not there, they all get stuck because people in there probably are dealing on project work. Every scientist is there doing the project work. Once the project is approved, that's when they can be able to do that. But Charles, for me, I think another fundamental issue are the priorities we fund within here in this country. So if we allocate 10 billion to buy hose, how is it going to increase production? How is it going to add value to what we are doing? How is it going to bring marketing? I mean, you find that we are going to remain...
Even the reality is, in the countryside, people don't even have those hoses. They're not there.
If you don't have a hoe, you're not a farmer. In my village, if you don't have a hoe, you're not a farmer. That's pure as that. It's like, I don't know, if you don't have a hoe, you're not a farmer, so probably you're just masquerading.
No, we don't have farmers, we have peasants.
Yes, we do have farmers, of course. But for me, I want to emphasize the issue of agriculture and where our priorities are. I think we have to look at where are our priorities as a country. If we are 80% agriculture, what are we doing about it? We do not even have to have this debate of do we have farmers, do we have peasants? No. We know it very well. The statistics are there that we are basically an agricultural kind of country.
Period.
What have we done? And for me, I stretch it even further. After seeing that it is agriculture, which region is better in this or the other?
Yes.
Are we looking at every region, you know, at the same level? If Karamoja is producing...
Have you checked those zoning reports?
Yes.
The reports that recommended zoning for the country.
And are we implementing that?
Let me tell you,
when it
Charles.
comes to implementation.
If a particular region is producing milk, and we are saying that Dairy Development Authority has never been in Karamoja, so how do you expect those people to respond to anything called demand?
I think the zoning said Karamoja, Teso should concentrate on producing beef, not milk. They're not very well suited.
Fine. Let us say raising animals.
But let's go back to the question. Sylvia, what do you think? Sitting at the Equal Opportunities Commission, you must be banning the midnight oil, thinking about the employment or unemployment situation in this country before you can even think about equalization. So what is that silver bullet?
Yes,
to deal with the unemployment question?
For us, what we have looked at, like everyone is talking about, what has government done, what has government done? For us, we've put our lens on what are those programs that government has brought up to see that the employment issue is dealt with. And we've seen the Youth Lively program. These are some of the programs that government has to put all its kind of energy and thinking and find out how best can these programs perform. So the Equal Opportunities Commission, you are asking, what does it do? We put the lens on those kind of programs and we audit what are the issues, how best can these programs help. And of course there are challenges here and there. And that's when we urge government that if this program is to work and we find our youth working, look at these challenges. That's how we get it.
There's a debate, Yusuf, that sometimes says over-focusing on government is actually the wrong discourse. Move away from government, think about things you can do, though sometimes you can't avoid government, because if you try to avoid them, they'll come through Uganda Revenue Authority or other agencies and still impact. But for the most part, I think the unwritten policy on creating employment and encouraging businesses to thrive has been for governments to retreat on a lot of controls, regulation, taxation, and a few other things until you fall into their dragnet somehow, somewhere. But is it possible to discuss unemployment in this country without putting government at the center of it?
No, government plays a fundamental role as a facilitator whether that is about providing the incentivizing regulatory framework for me to be able to risk my savings and invest it into a business which potentially employs more people, or making it easier for me to access credit, or investing in public goods and services like roads and energy to make it possible for me to run a business. So it's not possible to discuss growth generally, and for that matter employment growth, without having conversations about the role of government. But whether government should be playing direct labor market intervention is like itself making available some credit facilities like youth livelihoods programs, and how that should be done, I think is a matter which is still up for debate. And I want to move to a point which Onapito raised. Is the government helping to increase purchasing power to make sure these farms can grow and hire more people? Now, what we look at in our research is also the issue of opportunity. That we have too many problems as a country. The needs for growth, the needs for creating employment are just massive. That we have to carefully target our resources where we have chances. And there are two things. Are you investing in areas as a country where you have a competitive advantage? Are you investing in areas where you have a capacity?
Talk about competitive advantage.
Yes.
We are trying to manufacture cars.
Exactly.
Vis-a-vis adding more money to value addition in agriculture.
And you know what, Julius? We analyze the issue.
What's wrong with that?
So
China put its first commercial transport jet into the air, the C919.
We analyze the issue of
China, this is Uganda.
It doesn't mean that they've spent years investing in this.
No, it
doesn't mean that they were not aware that Boeing was manufacturing planes, that Airbus was manufacturing planes.
But they first ensure that their people are fed and they are very good.
But before Yusuf comes back in, to me the ultimate competitive advantage is dominating the domestic market. Because that is within our control. We don't have to suffer issues of quality, non-tariff barrier, because we compete on our own rules. So can we first of all, under this boo-boo, capture as much as possible of what is now imported become Uganda. That's the ultimate competition.
And that's why we go back to priority.
That's where government could. Let's take for example the issue of textiles.
Let me just a moment. I carried a copy of the East African, but this is the one for this week. 2 weeks ago, we ran a story in the East African about the tea sector in this country. Tea is the second largest forex contributor for this country as an agricultural product after coffee. But we found, one, there is no regulation from government, there is no tea development authority, the industry is running on its own, people are grappling to find how to do things. But what shocked me most is we sent to the Mombasa auction the worst graded tea. Rwanda sends the highest quality, in terms of quality, the best grade, followed by Kenya. Uganda is last. Even in terms of volumes, we've been dropping in terms of volumes. But even the tea consumed locally is heavily taxed. So tea producers are saying, if you're trying to encourage people to drink Ugandan tea, which we produce here, harnessing the domestic market you're talking about, why put heavy taxes on tea?
Plus coffee, even coffee.
Even coffee. How do you harness a domestic market? And if you do assessments, they will tell you that people who produce coffee, people who produce tea, if people were producing cocoa, if we're not just focusing on the export market, there seems to be one mismatch which I'd like you, gentlemen and lady, to deal with. The thinking about an investor in this country as somebody either from Europe, from India a few years ago, are now more focused from China. That is the definition of an investor. The definition of a tourist as someone with a different skin color. That is a tourist. That's how we understand them. And the thinking of production only focusing on the export market. How does that impact the joblessness?
Look, for me, I was just emphasizing my point. Let's take textiles, which is one of the oldest stories in this country, because we are all wearing clothes. All these are imported largely. This is where I think government can make direct intervention if need be, or indirect. Let's say you come and set up a textile, or Mwangusha, Uganda, and set up a textile. We want you to supply these all government institutions where we are funding prisons, army, government schools, where stop wearing this Chinese nylon and what have you,
Plastic.
and this will be the source of the uniform. And for you, no tax. But what are we aiming at? We are aiming at people starting to grow cotton and consuming goods when they earn income and paying taxes, VAT. Their employees in the factories will be paying income tax. So whatever you are forfeiting in terms of direct taxation on the manufacturer, you recover it. But above all, you create employment.
And you see, Charles, what he talks about, that what kind of investor do we look at? So when it comes in, to tax exemptions, then the local investor is not thought about. Please just go and compete like the rest. But the foreign investor whom we have branded comes here, says, guys, I need a tax exemption, and we give immediately.
I need land.
Give a whole day. We give land.
Maybe it's Ugandan culture. Visitors always have to get
In our report, we try to call those distortionary policies. You have one policy on the other hand emphasizing promoting agriculture, and then you have another policy on the other hand taxing agricultural products or inputs heavily, so you don't know which is what. And that we identify to be one of the binding constraints to the growth of farms in certain sectors, for example, agriculture. But also to look at the issue of innovation. We are talking about the education system. Julius mentioned the issue of we are manufacturing cars. We try to analyze two innovations, big ones in that report. One is the issue of killer EV, the cars. And the ultimate question is, where are you going to sell the cars? Will you sell the Ugandan market? We look, even looking at agriculture, on the issue of the presidential initiative on banana industrial development. Too much money invested there, and I think the logic behind it was we could be able to export matoke abroad in very many processed forms. Because first of all, I wouldn't expect a Ugandan to buy processed matoke when the fresh one is close, is cheaper. And then looking at the export market for matoke, just look at the ones we call the tourists who come here. Go with them to an African restaurant here and let them taste matoke. Usually they will tell you, oh, it's delicious, especially when you have it with peanut sauce. You go back with the same guy to the same restaurant tomorrow and you say, are you not having matoke? He says, I tasted that yesterday. So certain things are just so unique to us, and certain people cannot acquire the taste of those products easily. So if we have coffee, which is demanded all over the world, why then are we investing more money in developing and processing matoke,
for the
which
export
we
market?
are not sure that anybody else enjoys eating matoke in the world apart from us in Uganda?
We have some vested interest in some of these particular projects, But I think that analogy is still also, very nice. Where do you place priorities? And I think that has been our biggest challenge.
Can we discuss placement of priorities after a short break? Welcome back to this last segment of the fourth estate, where we'll be taking feedback from you, our viewers, and I have quite many messages, SMS sent from my phone. Madrin Binji has been watching, and she says, why did I even bother going into the Arsenal Man U discussion? I shouldn't even have bothered to go there.
You touched some other parts.
Normally, Joseph says, doesn't it also point to the level of desperation for someone to come for interviews where only 194 opportunities are available? He finds himself or herself in a crowd of 9,000 applicants, but such a person goes ahead to sit for the interview, to wait for the whole day and sit for the interviews. The chances are almost non-existent. Or where an organization calls for volunteers, and almost everybody turns up seeking for that volunteer opportunity. But my question is, when does a job become a job? Is it when you're employed by someone? Yes. Sylvia, when does a job become a job?
And I think that person was hearing me loud and clear. For me, I said the issue of just looking for jobs is one thing maybe we should also turn our heads away from and start thinking about creating our own jobs. And I said government should only come in to help out or to support those few entrepreneurs who are trying to create jobs. And then I also went back to our education system. We should also put more emphasis on the vocational schools so that people are able to come out and do their own things rather than sitting in Nambole the whole day waiting for, there are just 3 vacancies and you're 1,500. If you can put up something and government is out there to help out on taxes, because I've heard my gentleman here discussing about the issue of taxes. I think it's very, very important. Much as we need taxes as government, but government should look at that issue and see how can they help the local investors. It's very important to look at these local investors.
Can I just
can I take 1 moment, then you can comment at once. Nteja Simo, my brother, Nteja Simo was complaining earlier. He says, where is fourth estate, brother? It is 10 minutes past. Should I go sleep? And Nteja, I'm happy you stayed, and apologies that we started late. But his comment is here. He says the education system is the major culprit responsible for unemployment. In the United States of America, someone finishes S4, takes up a vocational career. After 2 years, this person can produce a chair. In Uganda, the reason we go to school is to score A's, get first-class degrees, put on a necktie, and look for jobs.
Look, just before I have a bit of problem there. I know there are also a number of institutions in this country that train people to produce chairs.
Yeah.
What often frustrates most of these young people is that when they start producing the chairs, they don't have people to buy the chairs.
Yes.
So they leave making the chairs and become security guards in the city.
And so that's the argument that Sylvia is raising.
So
you can create your own job, but then, and there are many, many young people who are walking out of university and saying, I am not going to walk the streets looking for a job. I am going to create my own job. They go create it, spend a few months. If they survive for a year, there is no market, either for their services or their goods, the goods they produce, they fold.
Exactly, Charles. So you see, we blame the education system for not making Ugandans able to create their own jobs. And all the research around is saying we are one of the highest entrepreneurial countries in the world. I think number 2. That suggests that therefore the will, the zeal of Ugandans to start a business is actually very high. In fact, if you talk to many of those young people who go to Nambole to wait for a job, one job in 9,000, many of them would actually be running a business somewhere. Many of us do jobs, but also run a side business somewhere. The truth is that the desire to run an own job, and again the research you refer to for job creation suggests is necessity-driven. People start a business simply because they don't have anything else to do, to say, because there are no jobs, let us look away from that and think about creating our own jobs.
Isn't it driven by an obsession also, to think of a job as being employed by someone? I've seen people do analysis and say, someone has a job, I mean is doing their own thing. They are vending bananas downtown. They have these old women who carry the bananas, sell to them, and they can make 300,000, 400,000, even up to $1 million shillings per month. But society does not consider them employed. Even they themselves do not consider themselves employed. They consider themselves until they get, I think it's Joachim Boembo who wrote a column, I think, I don't know if it was for the East African or for the Sunday Vision, where he said until, and he used this, so I'll use it the way he used it. A Chinese comes, gets tax incentives, gets a building, puts in a few computers, recruits people who will spend the whole day waiting for that job, and gives them a computer. They sit there for a whole day and gives them 200,000. And they will feel, now I have a job, I have an address, I work somewhere.
Charles, let me ask you one question.
Yes.
If I am vending bananas, and then a Chinese comes and sets up a computer and I run to go and work for the Chinese, do you think I have gone there simply because it is a job, or is it most likely going to be the case that the job the Chinese offers is potentially paying more, is more stable, is more predictable?
Like I'm not employed is not because you actually are not earning an income.
But people have also closed their businesses. You know, you have a salon where you have been earning 3 million.
Yes.
When you have applied for a job and they invite you, you close it and start earning.
Yes, and you go and get a million.
And I don't think we have evidence for that. Because what we see quite often is that people start businesses. Even the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, which has done a lot of research about entrepreneurship in Uganda and many other countries, suggests many people start businesses here, over 75%, simply because they don't have anything else to do. So they are survivalist entrepreneurs. You try to start a business because you have to do something.
Yes.
And you drive from Changi every day.
Do we have the resilience to stay on the business side of things and try to grow it instead of running away to look for a job?
But you see, if you drive from church every day, and what do you find? Boutiques, restaurants, salons.
There's something you mentioned, I think, which we should emphasize, is that as you start this small business, chances are that when you project 6 months down the road, you are likely to say, oh, this thing is likely to cross. I don't jump out of
because there is simply no opportunity
now,
for it to expand.
Okay.
You don't have the client.
Kisa is watching us and says the lady on the show raised an old argument about education. The problem is more complex. You can't reduce it to the education system. Thinks it's broader than that. But it doesn't tell us how complex it is. Let me see. Someone here says, even those occupying government jobs are either underemployed or unemployed, whereby they spend more time stealing public funds and asking for bribes.
They are busy. How can they are unemployed? I'm just stealing takes a lot of effort.
Government pretends to pay them when its workers pretend to work. Government fails to create jobs and expects young people to manage what a whole government has not been able to do in the last 30 years plus. In Uganda, you can only feel the effectiveness of the state when it comes to opposition politics. Nobody should fool us about government jobs. UPE and USE policies are great opportunities for the state to provide employment to huge numbers of skilled and unskilled youth in cotton fields, textile factories that make cash. Uniforms, make school uniforms, bags, shoes and furniture. Instead, the very government has allowed importation of poor quality materials for uniforms. This contributes to employment of Chinese instead of Ugandans. What an open tragedy. The argument you're raising, I think, is what this viewer is also raising. Ismail Musaladu says, it all starts and ends with the right attitude. And that is not taught at school, and Mr. Yusuf Chiranda's report never captures that. There is a general fatigue and bad attitude resident in the country. I know of a friend who wants to start a business because he will no longer have to wake up early for work but sleep until midday. You see what I mean? And we have some callers online, but let me just take one or two. Yes, Madrin Benji is still watching and she says, how do you expect to increase purchasing power when there is no income? And Rama says, as for youth unemployment, he says, thank you for the show, thank you Rama, says, as for youth unemployment, we have sports betting to cover that. As long as young people struggle to get 1 or 2K to place a bet and fantasize about 10 million stake, we are good. Actually, they are overemployed. I think it's been sunk in cheek. We have some callers. Let me pick a few callers and then we'll continue with the discussion in studio. Hello? I think we lost that one. Hello? Hello? Hello?
Yes, Charles.
Yes, sir. Your name and where you're calling from?
My name is Simon. I'm calling from Kampala.
Simon, keep it brief.
Yes, my comment is that away from education, I think that government has done very little to deepen or to sharpen our comparative advantage. For instance, the agricultural productivity, I do not see, for 31 years, I do not see the ability of Ugandans, for instance, to sustain a production and supply of items like goods, livestock, beef, or milk to any country. Recently, for instance, when the president went to Qatar, I did not see any producer that he was marketing for Uganda to supply agricultural commodities. For instance, we one time hosted Matia Kasaija, and he said he got a contract to supply goods, but about supplying two loads, he was unable to sustain that because of certain incompetencies. So this is a very good example of how Ugandans can begin something and cannot sustain it. I think the researcher there can inform us about the infant mortality of businesses that begin and fail. One, because of the terrible investment climate here, taxes are so high, transport is so terrible, jam is here and there, and electricity is so expensive, so business cannot therefore thrive, and therefore this is the source of unemployment or unsustainable unemployment in the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon.
That's a
Do you have another caller?
That's a good analysis.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Yes, hello.
Yes, sir. Your name and where you're calling from?
My name is Jimmy.
Yes, Jimmy?
Yes, I think one thing that we need to see also is the revenue authority. Uganda Revenue Authority, once somebody comes in, you open a company today, you start selling your banana, you try to formalize your company. Tomorrow they come with assessment. You are discouraged. And that's one thing we are failing to talk about. It is discouraging. You have seen many people closing, saying if their assessment is, I don't know how it is. What can people talk about that?
Because thank you very much, Jimmy.
Issues that must be looked at. It cannot encourage people to come up with their businesses.
Thank you very much, Jimmy. Do we have another caller? Hello? 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 Hello?
Hello?
Yes, please. Your name and where you're calling from?
I'm calling from Toronto.
Yes, please. Go ahead with your comment or question.
I'm calling and I'm calling from Toronto.
Yes, go ahead. Oh, sure, I can hear you.
I appreciate the debate, and most of the factors that are leading towards unemployment in this country, most of them are actually government people.
Government what?
Government people.
Okay.
Yes. Oh, sure. Yes, please.
When investors come here, they are given tax holidays. And yet the domestic investors are not given tax holiday. Now, as an investor comes, what he's thinking of first is to make his profit. And this profit is supposed to take it back to his home area. He's not thinking of employing the young Ugandans here or taking all of them. That need jobs. Secondly, we have a lot of bureaucracy. You open up a company, you want to register a company, go to the register of company, it will take you months. They may not register an account.
They have actually improved now. Takes you a day.
Okay.
And yet this would be a way of creating jobs for the Uganda. Now, let's look at the education system. We are blaming the education system. Teachers are produced in this country, more or even the best teachers. They go out there to open up schools. As registering a school, you got the means of education. Registering a school will be a nightmare.
Thank you.
They will come and close up this school because
Thank you very much, Ocho, for those comments. Do we have another caller? Hello? Hello? Hello?
Hello.
Yes, sir. Your name and where you're calling from?
Yeah, I'm Jude calling from Shaka.
Yes, Jude.
Yes, Charles, I'm concerned by the system of education we have. Because, like in my setup in the town where I'm born, the only people who have work to do are those who are lucky and there was no money to educate them. Because for them the expectations were low, so they went into practical training like building construction in very low institutes like after P7 and S4. But the army of graduates we have, for them there is either a big job or no job at all. So my submission is that we need to reorient our system of education. First of all, it's possible the education system of the means to admit students into every university. So we revert back to total education, not just grades and such, because that's what's killing our country. Every parent wants to take his child to school to get 4, then 8, then 20, then first class. Yet in reality, the best would have been, there's all of us go there by schools probably, there's schools up secondary. And for certain institutions, apart from courses like medicine here, all courses should be either part-time, weekend, but people are doing something. We are wasting our time, our youth, and creating lazy and high expectant people.
Thank you very much, Jude. Thank you for that contribution. And let me fix this one up again. Someone says, do you recall Idi Amin's 18 points in 1971, the ones that justified his coup? One key point was unemployment and discrimination of locals vis-a-vis foreigners in the economy. This 1971, today is 2017. How many years ago? How many years in between?
About 40 something.
46.
We're still having the same discussion.
46.
Gentlemen and lady, you hear the feedback from the audience. Let's start with the broader question of taxation, because I think it comes out from many of the callers.
Look,
how does taxation affect employment?
Essentially, for big business like the one I'm associated with, lower taxation is inherently good for employment, because it's a main driver in the pricing of products. And the moment products are priced at an affordable level, then you have more consumption, and it means
you can hire more people.
You hire more people, but also you have more demand for raw materials, in case the raw materials are local like ours. But of course, I think there's also a question of appreciating the need for taxation is linked to people not seeing the service delivery that taxation ideally is the rationale for. So until when government is able to clearly link taxation with deliverables in a way that cannot be debated, I think people will always resist taxation. Yet we are told countries with the highest taxation rates, like the Nordic countries, also have the best services. So there is rationale for taxation if it can translate to better services. So I think that's the biggest.
Julius, your take on taxes. Our tax regime and how it facilitates or demotivates creation of jobs.
I think it's a question, something mentioned about I think it's really a very important point that we should mention.
I think Simon talked about it is taxation, the environment, climate. Jimmy talked about URA. Otro talked about tax holidays for investors, bureaucracy, education system, and it's the guy from Ishaka who talked about the education system.
I think two areas. Number one is that URA is looking at targets in most cases. How much are we collecting? To what extent? So that's why immediately you register a business, they slump you with an assessment fee immediately. We need to orient that to ensure that probably once you have registered, then in which way can you help you to ensure that before they begin the assessment, you've already made some profits. I think that's a very important point, Charles. The other important policy is our taxation policy. I think URA is guided by taxation policy we do. So as such, we need to go back to see how we can be able to ensure that one, everybody pays their fair share of taxes. Because our taxation system right now is that you have a group of people who are able to pay taxes, are in a higher income bracket, but they have excluded themselves, and I mean our MPs, remember. So me who is down and I want to pay taxes, I find it extremely difficult and annoying to begin to pay taxes. The second option, the other part also is that our informal sector is not within the taxation bracket. So you find that it is me and you who
can avoid taxes, try to avoid them. And the MPs fall in that
But you see, the compliance also is that, like he mentioned, is that when the compliance would increase if you see the returns of what we have paid. But most especially is that people who are major tax are those who have got fixed addresses and have got proper books of accounts. So a farmer who has got 20 acres of banana plantation and is earning 2 million, for example, he doesn't pay a single tax. But a border border, because he has a stage where he is, then it is very strong tax on him, and he earns probably 40,000 in a week. So the kind of taxation system or regime we are having is not favoring to promote employment. We really need to look at it to ensure that these kind of things are done.
Sylvia, you take on the question of taxes, because many people are raising.
For me, my comment about the taxation, of course we see a lot of discrimination. They talk about some group of people not paying taxes. They do have tax holidays, and they're investors. But we also have local investors who are paying their taxes diligently. So if they're talking about incentives on one side, you should also apply those incentives on another side.
And the local ones are collapsing under heavy taxation.
Exactly.
Paying even if they would desire to pay the
And maybe that's where the discrimination comes in. But also the issue of making sure the taxation body should make sure that theirs is not just about collecting, but how are they supporting the people where they are getting those taxes from. People in Chikubo will tell you, and all these other small businesses within the suburbs, they only see these people at the time of assessments, at the time of closing their shops, but they never put there anything like supporting them to maintain their businesses and to work better. But the tax body, it is their role to see that whoever is in business is supported so that they get more taxes.
But isn't that a function of, because my external as a layperson, as someone outside government, is that government speaks to each other. Government speaks to itself within the different departments within government speak to each other. Equal Opportunities Commission, the people at the people at the Registration Services Bureau, the people at Uganda Revenue Authority, the people at National Planning Authority, the people at Retirement Benefits, the people in different departments are speaking to one another, so that when you come out with a comprehensive, you come out with a policy, it is comprehensive enough. But what you see is uncoordinated troop movement. Everybody is doing their little thing. URA is doing something, someone who is supposed to be at investment promotion at Uganda Revenue Authority. You see, if you go to the commercial court, you'll find a lot of cases where UIA has given a tax holiday. URA thinks that tax holiday was undeserved, so they're trying to cancel it, challenge it. I mean, why can't you're part of government? Why can't government speak?
Yeah, there might be challenges here and there, but Mukunda said this in the very beginning. The issue of implementation, at the point of implementation, that's where the problem is. Everyone tends to do their own things. And I think as Ugandans, that's the point where we have to come in and say, this is the policy. This is how we are saying to do things. Is that what we are doing? So time of implementation, the documents are there, everything is written very well. But that point of implementation, that's when we have to come together and see that what we are speaking is what we are doing.
Deliver as one.
Your research, what do you say about taxation?
So I mean, there are two ways and two things which are extremely important about taxation. One is, of course, the level of taxation of what you earn and how exactly the government is using taxes as incentives to attract people to invest. And who does government see as the investor? I think that's the fundamental question. Is it the Japanese guy or is it Rugasira? And I think the public discourse here has settled that there's a lot of interest in foreign investors and not indigenous investors. Why that is so is exactly not clear. Why there is no interest in trying to support. Of course, there are domestic investors who have gotten support from government while others don't, also in that regard. But apart from the tax regime itself, the fundamental question is also how the taxes are collected. Now, look, you try to open a restaurant tomorrow, and maybe you don't have all the paperwork for taxes and so on and so forth. And either KCCA or URA passes by and says, okay, there's a restaurant operating here, it doesn't have the tax papers. They just branch and close you up and say, until you pay taxes, you're not going to open. And this might be somebody who has risked their entire saving to try and open up this kind of small shop.
There's someone who cried out. He'd put, I think by now he must have crossed the billion shillings. He put 700 million in developing a restaurant, converting an old residential facility somewhere in Kololo into a restaurant. Now below him is a restaurant run by what you'd call foreigners. Opposite is another restaurant run by the same kind of people, by different non-Ugandans. Just below on the other side is another restaurant, but he had a lot of issues with KCCA. He'd put up a structure, KCCA came and said, who approved your plans? We didn't approve them. They bulldozed them down. Then he tried to get his feet back on, URA came, and he had tried as much as possible to be compliant by consulting these agencies to be able to work with him, but sometimes not getting the right kind of support. Then another person, so you must have read the story in the, I think it ran the New Vision the other day, of a gentleman who is a breeder for Sahiwal. He has 500 acres of land, somewhere in Chaka. Government tries to resettle Ugandans just from Tanzania, brings them, eats up 200 of his acres of land. The land had been given to a foreign investor who failed to take off previously, but he's actually outside. And he's been going back and forth to try and resolve the matter with government, and no one is helping him. Everybody's, He moves around, they tell him, no, you entered government land. He says, no, I have my documents here. If I entered government land, open the boundaries, show who is wrong. But even if that were the case, as a local investor, don't you owe me as government an obligation to support me in my enterprise without, and he was complaining about, you're talking about employment.
Yeah.
I think he has about 20 workers who have run away because they're scared of people who are trying to chase them away from the land.
Just imagine if Good Africa Coffee goes down, how many people are going to lose jobs who are directly employed by Good Africa Coffee, and how many farmers are working with Good Africa Coffee who are going to be exterminated.
Although there is a question, Charles, that the quality of our internal investors is also the ones we have tried to bring up have totally also embarrassed us. Because when you look at the other list of the Juba list, those who wanted to be bailed out.
And but let us look at also the foreign investors. Is there a distinction?
No, yes. What I'm saying is that in trying also to build our internal entrepreneurship, I think let's be very clear, let's be very transparent in terms of if you want support from a government, how would you go about it? It will be open for everybody. And I think that's where Silva will come in and say it's an equal opportunity for everyone, so that at least everybody knows that idea. You go through the same process than having different players and different games for different people.
Yusuf, let me just stay with you let me run back across the panel again, starting with Onapito. Jude Inishaka Ushenyi goes back to the education system and says, those who are lucky to have jobs, those who have jobs, who have employment, are those who are lucky, had no money, so never went for an education.
Yeah, I said earlier that I don't have a big quarrel, but I know there is certainly weakness in the education system. To me especially, the biggest link is the primary level, where about maybe 60% of the kids drop out, and where do they go? They end up in agriculture or pretending to be in the subsistence agriculture, petty trade, but the primary education does not prepare them in terms of skills to either become a better farmer, a better market trader, or otherwise. They are being taught about all the foreign concepts we learned in primary school. So they basically learn nothing in relation to real life. In terms of secondary school, maybe I don't have a big problem. I think to me it's where the biggest dropout of people to go into subsistence agriculture, into subsistence trading. That's where skills must be given to support those livelihoods, because that's the reality. If someone is going to end up a worse farmer than their grandfather because they have stopped in P7, then what's the role of primary education?
Yes.
If someone is going to automatically become a mother because they fall out in primary school and they are not equipped to raise a child, then the education system is one thing. There are no school farms in primary schools. Can you believe it? No school farms in primary schools.
Education. Let me come to you, Yusuf, after education.
I think for me, purely is that we can't run away from education if we want to have the right employment. That if you want to have a mother who is going to provide quality nutrition and take care of the children, you want a mother who has got some basic level of education. And like what Peter said, I think we need to we need to invest seriously in vocational training. Skills education is very important for this country.
Sylvia.
And actually, just to add one thing, if we do that, it will really boost our informal sector, because it's the largest.
Yeah.
It's the largest. So if we do ignore the issue of vocational institutions and creating our own jobs, then the informal sector is going to be affected.
Yes,
so Charles, we work because we want to improve our welfare. If a job I get by doing vocational education is one which will earn me 150,000 or 200,000, and I have to live in Chivu in Katanga, where you feel conditions are not so good, I will most likely aspire to go for higher education, to go to university, because I think my chances of getting decent employment, which is kind of the conversation we are having now, are going to be higher. So what we see in that report is that although there are a lot of efforts by government to try and promote vocational education, donors are putting money in this, the parents and the students are looking at, hey, let us wait. What does a guy who graduates from technical college do? He becomes a plumber. How is the lifestyle of plumbers? Not so good. They don't choose that path. So looking at young people, looking at parents as economic agents, everybody is calculating it's not just about being able to get any job, It's about my chances of getting a decent job.
I think that's the issue that Sylvia needs to, and your colleagues in government need to address seriously. Because, yes, you can create your own job. You can get skills. Where those skills take you? Where do you find role models?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter where you are. There are very many young people. Some have been on the streets for so long. No, not young people, not just young people. Some have been on the streets for so long. Others have tried jobs and they haven't really worked out. And I think, what the heck? Let me contest and become a member of parliament. I have a better chance to earn better money than being so disciplined and becoming a plumber. Just like you said.
And it's a fantastic job to be a plumber if it pays.
Yes.
Yeah? Many, we hear stories of Ugandan lawyers and teachers who are abroad doing exactly these jobs we look down on here. So there is not necessarily a bad job. A bad job is that job which doesn't pay you well, is that job which doesn't take care of your health, is that job which doesn't have social safety. And as long as the jobs resulting from vocational education and training are those kind of jobs, then people will only go there as a last resort.
I think that's a good place to end. I'm afraid we have run out of time. We need to get out of here. Thank you very much, Yusuf Chiranda, for making time for the show. Thank you very much for the report. We'll be reading it, and then maybe we can interrogate it a little bit more. Thank you very much, Sylvia, for making time for the show. I think we need to pay a little bit more attention to the Equal Opportunities Commission. So we might be coming back to you to understand exactly what you do and how you do it, and for whom you do it.
And later we'll discuss
gender equity.
A certificate for gender equity.
Gender equity.
Julius Mukunda, your time I think is getting closer. The budget is being passed, I think, next month.
We should be
Early
doing
next month.
an evaluation.
You've done the evaluation. I don't know how much the evaluation helps us to reprioritize government.
Yeah.
To reprioritize allocation. And thank you very much, Konapito Ekomolite. Thank you very much to you all our viewers for joining us tonight and always, and thank you very much especially to those of you who gave us feedback, because that's what helps us to shape the discussion. The debate continues on our social media platforms, on Twitter, on WhatsApp, and on Facebook. From me, it's a good night.